Hello and welcome to the World Wanderers podcast, your source for travel stories, travel destinations, and travel philosophy.
I'm Amanda.
I'm Ryan.
And we're your hosts.
Hello and welcome to this episode of the World Wanderers podcast. We are happy to have you here. Thank you for investing your ear space in this episode. So today we are continuing on with our travel and entrepreneurship series, and we are very excited to be joined by Daniela and Azma from Adzenture Retreats.
Yeah, and this is a really fun interview to be doing because I got connected to Daniela and Azma through a retreat that I'm actually running with Adzenture, which I'm going to tell you a little bit more about at the end of the episode, so stay tuned for that. But when we decided to do this travel and entrepreneurship series, I immediately thought of them. They run a super cool travel business. It integrates yoga and adventure, which is so much of what we love. And of course, like any entrepreneurial endeavor, there's always challenges and hiccups and so many things that you never expect. So we talk about their story, where the idea for Adzenture came from, and everything in between on this episode. So without further ado, here is Daniela and Azma. We are very excited to be joined on the podcast today by Daniela and Azma from Adzenture Retreats. Welcome to the show today, ladies.
Hi. Thank you. Hi. Excited to be here.
Can you guys start by telling us where you're joining us from today?
So I'm Daniela, and I'm based in Toronto right now.
And I'm Azma, and I'm actually in Sri Lanka at the moment.
Amazing. That's so cool. And we want to dive into, everything about Adzenture and where the idea came from and what you guys currently do. But we thought a good place to start would be to back up and talk about, how you guys first got into travel and what first inspired you to travel.
Yeah, so I've actually been thinking about this a lot lately. I actually don't know exactly when. I don't come from a long line of travelers, so I don't know exactly when. I decided that I really wanted to travel, but I think it was kind of maybe with the creation of Facebook and access to photos and access to seeing what people around the world were doing. And once I think I was able to see that, it really kind of launched this like internal fire within me of just kind of curiosity to see what else existed in the world. And it took me a pretty long time to get the guts, I guess, to eventually, take that leap and travel. It wasn't probably until 2013 that I decided that, it was really time. And I was working in the corporate world for so long, and it's really hard in Canada. You only get 2 weeks vacation, which, Amanda, I think you can probably, if you recall your days working in the corporate world, it's just 2 weeks vacation that you get. And it's really hard to go out and to kind of see the world in such a short time frame. So in 2013, I actually decided to leave my job with TD, which is a bank here in Canada that I had been working for about 7 years. And I decided to take a year off and to travel. And it was a really, really big decision, but it was just something that I felt that I really needed to do. And I kind of just wanted to have, a long period of time to be able to do that. And my first stop was Australia, which was a really, it was very similar to Canada, but very, very far away. And then I went to Asia and Europe, and I did a lot of traveling within 8 months. And it was just a really amazing way to see the world. And to really spend, a fair bit of time in each destination. And it definitely changed the way I view travel, having had that experience as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think we can both relate to that for sure.
Yeah, so it was good. Yeah, but I mean, in terms of like what inspired me to do it, it's kind of hard. I'm actually in the process right now of moving and my childhood home in Toronto, which is a big part of the reason why I'm here right now. And I found like a journal entry that I wrote when I was probably 12, and it was talking about where what I want to do in the future. And I actually said, I want to see the world. And I actually don't remember feeling like that. Like I don't have memories of my childhood, like kind of dreaming about the world. So when I saw that, I was like really blown away. Like, wow, I actually maybe did deep down want to do this, but I don't really have many recollections of it.
Manifested at an early age.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, definitely. That's amazing.
And then, so for me, what inspired me to travel, I'd say is, I was born in Sri Lanka, and then at 9 years old, I moved to Canada with my family, and I just remember remember getting on that first flight, and, coming to Canada. It was just really that excitement of even being on a flight and just exploring like this new country and just meeting all the people, like learning about the country and everything like that, that goes into, when we visit a place, like from the food to the people to the culture, just understanding all of that and how it varies from different countries, I think is what inspires me to travel to the States. That'd be my answer.
And have you been in Sri Lanka ever since?
So I was in Sri Lanka till I was 9, and then I moved to Canada, and then after that I came back about 2 years ago, actually, because I went at such an early age, so I hadn't really understood the country. Like I hadn't lived in my adult year anyway to really know what the country was about and see all the beautiful places in the island. So everything was really new to me. And then about 4 years ago, I just always kind of had a want and the need of coming back to my roots, to be able to learn about my roots again and just rediscover the people, all the beautiful places in this little island. And that was kind of what like pushed me to come make it back here somehow. And then I had the opportunity, actually, when I was working at Expedia in Toronto. They were opening up an office in Sri Lanka, and I was like, okay, pick me, let me go. I think this is like the right time. And just the stars aligned, everything happened. And then I was able to come back here. But even previous to that, when I was working, I've always been in the hospitality and travel industry. Again, because of my love for travel and just even, seeing other people traveling, even into Canada. I was actually working at the CN Tower as one of my part-time jobs in university. So just seeing the excitement of people, coming into like a new place and just their awe and their look of their face, it was just really exciting for me. So I've just been in the hospitality and travel world since. And Sri Lanka, again, is just a big hub and a growing hub for hospitality and travel. And it hasn't really reached that cusp yet. So I just wanted to kind of get back here early on. So I spent about a year in Sri Lanka, and then just after I left Sri Lanka, I was able to like travel to Vietnam and Thailand and Cambodia. It was just really exciting to like again learn about the culture, and I'm a big foodie as well, so just eating the different types of foods, and just understanding how they use the different types of vegetables that are available in all different parts of the world. And how they, use it into what they eat what the locals typically eat on their daily basis. So it's just really exciting.
And did you guys know each other growing up in Toronto, or how did you meet?
So, funny story. We actually met in traveling. The both of us met in a trip in Mexico at a girlfriend's bachelorette party. And there was about 12 of us. 12 girls, right, Daniela?
Yeah, so we didn't know each other entering in. I didn't know anybody in the group. One of my friends was just like, I'm going to Mexico. And I was on this new kind of like, oh my God, I want to go everywhere. I had already been to Mexico, but I was just kind of really addicted to any opportunity to go away. So I was like, I'm in. And then I just showed up, didn't know anything. Met Azma. And actually, interestingly enough, I would say like the trip definitely, you go on one of these kind of group excursions and you get, pretty clearly close to everyone. But I would say that after the trip, like we didn't necessarily, become really close. Like it was probably about maybe 3 years that kind of went by where we kind of in contact here and there, but we weren't super close.
Because you moved to Australia and then I moved to Sri Lanka, and then I think we just both came back around the same time, back to Canada around the same time. So I did like about a year in Sri Lanka, and then Dana, you did about, how long in Australia were you?
Yeah, so after my travels, I decided to move to Australia, and I was there for about 2.5 years. I think we both maybe just found that we kind of could relate to each other in that sense because we had, moved away from home and we're living and I mean, it wasn't so much of a different culture for you, but it was just that experience of having lived abroad that we were kind of experiencing at the same time. So we could kind of talk about that. And that's kind of why we found ourselves back in Toronto around the same time. So it was very much so, like the stars had just aligned for us because we're like, oh, I hate being back. And as I was like, I hate you. And we kind of just, I don't know.
In the winter, mind you.
Yeah, we get that.
I think sometimes, kind of coming back from, we both had our individual reasons for coming back. And I would say that neither, like, we wanted to come back, but then a part of us, I think, really, continue to have that desire to not come. It's hard when you live abroad and then you return to your home kind of space, and it's hard you're not going to necessarily want to enter back into, the same routine you had before. And it's very hard to do so. So you kind of have this burning desire to, I don't know, kind of continue to live life abroad in some ways, which is why we both look to travel and potentially starting, I guess, a business that would allow us to do so.
Because just as I came back, I just didn't want to go back to corporate world. Like, I didn't want to join and be part of the rat race. I'm like, no, let me figure something else out. And I was kind of like looking at building up kind of like a travel agency tour operator into Sri Lanka to promote tourism into Sri Lanka, because the year I spent in Sri Lanka, I was just, traveling the country. And it was just amazing to see all the, what this tiny little island is packed of, like from waterfalls to beaches to mountains. There's just so much to see. So I was kind of looking at that at the time as I came back, and I didn't want to go back to the corporate world.
Yeah, and Daniela, was your time abroad kind of making you question a corporate career as well, or what was kind of making you more interested in entrepreneurship? Yeah,
so I think that it's so hard when I talk about this because it's just a feeling I had. I remember. So I was working in the corporate world in Toronto for 7 years before I went traveling. My time kind of traveling just made me realize that I needed to be somewhere different than Toronto. So I kind of decided to move to Australia. But that was, I still was happy to work kind of in a corporate environment, but I just felt that, if I was working in a corporate environment, but living somewhere else, it would still be exciting. And I would still have, opportunities to travel within the country and to surrounding areas. I decided to make that step over there. But actually what I found living in Australia is that I was living on Bondi Beach. I was a 4-minute walk from this amazing surf beach that I kind of could have only ever dreamed of. But I just found myself getting into a routine, and I was working for a company in a marketing capacity, and they were really cool kind of, tech startup kind of company. So it was a very different feel, but ultimately I was still working for somebody, and, I would go to the bus stop every morning, and it was located across the beach. But I remember I got to a point where I wouldn't even really look at the beach anymore. And I was just kind of, in a routine again, and I would come home from work, and it just became very much so, like kind of I was living in Toronto again. The only difference with Australia is that I did have a lot more vacation time. So my company allowed us 5 weeks vacation, which was a really, great bonus, I would say. Just allows you a little bit more time to travel. And in my time there, I was able to do a lot of traveling, but ultimately, I didn't feel like I was doing enough, and I also just didn't feel like I had the freedom. It was just something that I always felt like I wanted to start my own business and that I would. It's just I didn't know how. I didn't know how it was going to happen. I didn't know how it was all going to come together, but it was just like a weird feeling I got. And I remember I would sit at my desk and kind of daydream about the time when, what I would be working for would be for myself. So it was just something that I think was brewing for a long time.
Yeah, that's really interesting to hear. And I feel like I can relate to that quite a bit. It's like just kind of this, I don't know, this like gut feeling that something's not right and you need to change something. So it's cool that you followed that and decided to pursue your ideas. I'm curious where you guys got the idea for Adzenture from.
Yeah. So I had always been really, really interested in yoga. So I probably started practicing about 12 years ago. And after I kind of have a bit of an obsessive personality, so I get really, really into things. And when I started yoga, I was just going every day. I got so into it. And there came a point where I was pretty much sure that I wanted to open up my own yoga studio. And that didn't really go anywhere. But I just became really passionate about yoga. Now, it took me about 10 years to kind of explore this passion more. But I found kind of finding myself back in Toronto after living abroad and kind of not really sure what I wanted to do. One thing that had been on my bucket list for so long is going to get my yoga teacher training certification. And again, it was just a gut feeling. It was something that I wanted to do just to deepen my own personal practice and also understand the business of yoga and kind of just, get into a yoga teacher mind space so that I could potentially look at exploring yoga as a career option kind of within the yoga realm. So I went on this teacher training, and it was actually in Hawaii, and it was just the most magical experience. And it's great to be. I love the concept of kind of going away to educate yourself in some senses, because I find that it's really hard when you're kind of taking a course on the weekends or kind of putting yourself in kind of, I wouldn't say like a boring learning environment. So just being away and being, surrounded by like-minded people, and all you're talking about and all you're thinking about is yoga. And it was just a really, really good way to, understand, yoga as a whole, but also was a good way to experience kind of, being away and being surrounded by these people and just getting into a really, really good mind space. So, all that practice and all that meditation and kind of just, doing all this thinking, but also being surrounded by nature and by beauty and by all this stuff. The idea actually came to me in a meditation. So I was, really deep into this meditation, probably about 16 days into my training. And I just had this idea that, Azma's background was in hospitality and tourism. And I'm kind of a jack of all trades when it comes to business, and just something that I always wanted to explore. And I was now taking this yoga course. And I remember just standing up and running to my room and getting my phone and texting Azma and just saying, "Hey, why don't we do yoga retreats?" And she was like, "Oh my God, I've been thinking about this." It was just the weirdest kind of stars are aligning. Yeah, for the next little while, I think we couldn't really stop thinking about it. And then as soon as I got back from Hawaii, we kind of sat down and we're just like, okay, how can we actually make this happen? And I guess that's kind of like where that's where the initial idea came from. There's definitely been, a lot of different, I would say, I wouldn't say issues that we've gone through, but there's a lot of different,
ideas that we had that we wanted to kind of, I guess, explore. And then just kind of narrowing it down. Is that what I guess you were trying to say, Dana?
Can you expand on that a little bit? Because I think that's something that a lot of people experience. Like, I think it's really rare that you have an idea and you execute it like 100% how that first idea
that's kind of what I was trying to explain. So the idea itself was to essentially bring people together to experience travel, in a group setting while feeling really relaxed. So I think it was more so what we wanted to work towards was kind of like that end goal of the retreat space, which, is still, I guess right now it's becoming a little bit more saturated, but it's just been in the last couple of years where it's really kind of gained momentum. So what we initially started is we planned our own retreat. So the initial idea was for us to be hosting these retreats, and I would be teaching. Azma's husband is also a yoga teacher, so him and I were going to be looking at teaching together. and Azma was going to be responsible for, I guess, more like the logistics side of things. And we put together, it was hard for
A
us.
really cool itinerary.
Yeah, we
Sri
put together
Lanka. It was
really hard that itinerary. And that's where the business name came from, is because we really wanted to merge adventure and that Zen feeling. We put together the itinerary, and we started, we opened up all of our social media channels, and we started marketing this retreat that we were hosting, which was March of last year. And we didn't get anybody to sign up.
But we still went. We still went. Because I think anyway, I had to be in Sri Lanka in March, and then Daniela was just like, "Yeah, I'll come too," and at least kind of explore the country and see it for herself. And yeah, because we had a traveling retreat in Sri Lanka planned out, which is really cool. So we said, let's just do it ourselves, and then kind of go through the motions.
And I think that was probably our first learning, in that you need time. Well, there's a couple of learnings we took from that. So one being, you need to build your audience before you kind of launch into this. And secondary was, time. We had only given ourselves 3 months to market, fill a retreat, which, I mean, going into it, we full well knew the risks involved. And we even said, if we don't get anybody on this retreat, we're just going to go to Sri Lanka and we're just going to explore and take a lot of photos and build content. So we kind of had that expectation from the beginning. We weren't, we didn't go in blindly thinking, no, we're going to fill this and it's going to be amazing.
Yeah.
We hoped for that, but we kind of had a backup plan, which worked out really well.
Yeah, that's super interesting. And was there any point like throughout that you're like, oh, maybe we should just give up on this idea? Or were you guys just kind of looking at it like, okay, this is what we can learn from this and this is how we can change it?
Yeah.
I don't think we ever gave up hope.
No, we just, as soon as we came back from Sri Lanka, we did instead look at a different kind of model of the business. So instead of hosting our own, we said, okay, why don't we plan retreats? Because with the context that we had in Sri Lanka, why don't we really just, build out packages and plan these retreats instead for teachers who want to go and take their groups on these retreats. So we took that angle, and that took off right away. We lucked out with this one big client from the UK. And so she's actually hosting her retreat in February, coming up in Sri Lanka and here at Ketia as well. And so then after that, we got a few other gigs to plan retreats. So that kind of really worked well for us. And then we said, okay, well, why don't we still, let's not give up the idea of hosting our retreats. Why don't we partner with some really well-known yoga teachers? And we kind of understood the fact that yoga teachers don't have the time to plan and work out all these logistics and, communicate with students to just all the background logistical coordination work that goes into, planning a retreat or any event. There's quite a lot of work, and which yoga teachers don't have times because they're doing, they'll be teaching 2 days a week or twice in a week. Twice in a day is what I had to say. So stuff like that. We kind of understood that, the yoga teacher's schedule in that sense. And then we found that this could be a benefit for them, and we could really partner with the teacher and kind of provide them with the service instead, and just see how it went from there. And then we went to. And then we got into just partnering with really cool yoga teachers. We just reached out to them and they wanted to work with us due to those reasons because they didn't have time to plan their own. And that kind of set us off in the right direction. So now we do both, where we do have a model that plans retreats for teachers. And then we do also have a model that we partner with teachers to do our own co-hosted retreat.
And I know you had the Sri Lanka connection, obviously, but how did you guys start going out and finding the businesses that you were going to work with when actually running the retreats?
So for example, we spread out of Sri Lanka because of this one client, actually. Initially, we were kind of going to stick to Sri Lanka because it was brand new in the retreat space. Still is quite brand new, whereas Bali is like very saturated, and there's some, other destinations like Costa Rica that's again very saturated. So we were going to kind of stick to Sri Lanka. But we did have this one client who wanted us to plan like multiple retreats around the world.
I think the most important thing that's kind of happened within our business is just our ability to kind of remain fluid and to, like, we constantly wanted to evolve, but we just kind of that it was always going to be a natural progression. So when we initially started the company, we were going to focus on Sri Lanka mainly because of Azma's, contact and network and ability to really understand. And also because when a lot of, people from different countries are looking to come to Sri Lanka, it's very hard to get, advice from somebody who's lived there, who's spent a great deal of time there, and to be able to have them plan a retreat in Sri Lanka. So that was really, really good. And we were finding people were really interested in that. But I think we kind of had the desire to go global and to explore locations as well. We just didn't know, we didn't know when it was going to happen, but it was something that we knew would, be a natural progression. And we had reached out to this one client who wasn't necessarily in the yoga space, but she was planning retreats, and she was actually based in Toronto. And we actually had a meeting with her, and we really, really hit it off, and we talked about so many things, and we really connected on a personal level with her. And then she said, okay, I love you guys. Like, I definitely want you guys to plan our retreat in Sri Lanka. And we kind of both looked at her and we're like, great, but what about all the other locations? We can do that too. And so, so she didn't come to us and say, hey, plan my entire calendar. It just kind of happened in conversation. And then she was like, I mean, if you guys can do it, put together a proposal. We'll see what you guys come up with. And then we can kind of take it from there. So we were like, yes, we are so up for this challenge. We want to do this. And then that was kind of the gateway that led us into exploring different destinations. It was just like that natural progression, which was really, really nice. And I would say that we're still working with her today, and she was really kind of a really good contact to have, because we ended up planning 6 retreats for her. So it was a really good experience for us and really good exposure. And
Wow. So 6 retreats in 1 year with the same person?
Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible.
So that in itself was really great. And also she has a very unique concept to her business. So it was a bit of a challenge, and I think that's what
very much.
It was very much a challenge for us. So I think when we were able to, really work with these properties and put these packages together, she was really blown away. Like, I remember her being like, wow, you guys are amazing. I can't believe you did this. And I think it goes back to, Azma's background and being able to speak to hotels and the hotel language. Because it's really hard, I think, even for me, sometimes I'm like, how do I word this? And then she kind of has to take it over. So I think it's been really good to also understand from, a business partnership perspective that her and I both have different skill sets. And it's been good to be able to understand that early on, and we don't really step on each other's toes when it comes to certain things. So, she understands, and she's the expert in the hospitality space. And then I'm kind of more on the marketing side, relationship management side. So kind of more like the client side. So it's been good to have us together, standing,
tag team.
Yeah, it's been really good.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I think that that's definitely something you need in a business. I feel like it's probably like traveling with somebody, like you find out pretty quickly how well you work together and that sort of thing.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And I think also it's just our personalities are both very easygoing. Azma has this amazing ability to just be very much so optimistic about everything. Like, I wouldn't say that I'm a pessimist, but I'm always kind of like, are you sure? Do we want to do this? And she's like, yeah, let's do it. It'll be good.
I always say, like, just give it a shot. It's like, I've always been even in my career, I've just been a yes person. And yeah, like I'll I'll just say yes to everything and then we'll figure it out. That's kind of like, you know, the model of our business too. Like, we'll figure it out. We don't say no. Like, we'll, you know, give us anything, give us your requirements. We'll figure it out and come up with a solution. And that goes for any business, really. It's just a matter of putting your brains together and working through a problem, working through a challenge to figure out a solution.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. And so as you guys have expanded and worked with more teachers, if somebody wants to run a retreat in a different place other than Sri Lanka, you guys run retreats like all over the world now, right?
Yes. So we have retreats in Tulum, Cambodia, in Mexico, and Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, Cambodia, Bali. Where else? I'm just trying to think. Yes. And then
Rica, Nicaragua.
Yeah, we've got Nicaragua coming up, and hopefully Iceland in the works as well. Hopefully Costa Rica in the works as well.
And what we found is that, you know, although we looked at our own personal experience and said, hey, you know, Bali's a bit saturated. And that was our own kind of internal thought dialogue. But in reaching out to different teachers and you know, finding out where it is that they wanted to host retreat, we actually found that they really wanted to come to Bali. So although it's, you know, a bit saturated in the retreat space, they teachers that wanted to go to Bali, and then they also had students that wanted to travel with them to Bali. So it's kind of understanding that, you know, kind of what your own perception is, not necessarily what your client is going to want. So just, again, being fluid and receptive to that.
Yeah, definitely. That's interesting to hear. And I'm curious, you know, if you start working with somebody and they're like, okay, you know, I want to go to Bali, and maybe you guys haven't worked there before, how do you guys go about finding the retreat space and the connections in that place?
We first, especially, I mean, because it is a retreat, you know, one requirement that we have to have is the yoga shala, like the yoga space to practice. It can't be like outdoors. It can't be, I mean, it has to kind of have like some sort of a shelter from the sun, because you want to be comfortable. That's where you're going to be spending most of your time. And then also just location of the space, you know, how far it is from the airport, for example. So there's a lot of like logistical reasoning that goes behind it as well. And, you know, we like a traveler, we look at reviews of other guest stays, especially if we haven't been to that property or been to that country. We'll look at reviews, and then, or we'll sometimes also reach out to other tour operators that work there, and then get their assistance as well. And they, you know, they typically have partners that they work with quite often. So we kind of take that route, or otherwise we'll reach out to them to hotel partners directly. But usually the yoga shala is a must. And then kind of like the distance from the airport, how far does the teacher want to go, take the students to, how many people can the property accommodate, like what kind of food can they take. Food's very important as well. Most of course, retreats we do are of course vegetarian. So that's something that's important. It's not just like, you know, here's some fruits on a platter. What, you know, we need like some good quality food and like hearty food for yoga students and the teachers that come and actually practice throughout the day. So those are some important things. And then again, location based on like what activities are around the area. Like we said, adventure is still part of, you know, Adzenture. So we do look at like, we always look at something, incorporating some sort of an activity or excursion nearby. So yeah, we look at all those things, and then we see, of course, who's the best fit amongst all of that.
And I guess we kind of view that's where, you know, our own experience traveling kind of comes in. You know, when you're looking at going to a new destination, you do a lot of research. So obviously with the ability of the internet and, you know, sites like TripAdvisor and a lot of different booking engines for hotels, we basically have a list of requirements that we need a space to have. And we just go and find, you know, a lot of different venues, and we'll usually send them a form and say, you know, do you meet these requirements? And then they'll usually come back with a proposal. And then at that point, we kind of go, you know, and do more research into the actual properties that meet our requirements, and then kind of finalize a property based on that.
Okay, that's cool. I'm curious. So part of the idea for starting the business was to have something where, it's more dynamic, get out of that routine, and probably be able to travel a lot more. How has it differed than expectations, actually, like getting in and running and building the business?
Interesting. So I think that I was having a discussion with somebody about this recently. Like when you envision running your own business and being able to travel for work versus what it actually is like, it does change a little bit. So I think that I was recently in Mexico for one of our clients' retreats, and I was, while I was there, I was scouting different properties and, just having a lot of interaction with partners and teachers and stuff like that. And it wasn't really, it was great. I was, in Mexico. I was, in this amazing, beautiful place, but the mindset was still business, which is a little bit different. So you're not, able to relax and enjoy as much because you have a different focus. And I was actually on social media a lot, which I try not to do so much when I'm traveling, but I was on it a lot. And I actually had one of my friends comment and say, why don't you put your phone down and enjoy? And it really bothered me. And I actually responded, I'm here for work. Like, I need to be working. And it was just kind of this whole kind of inability to relax and slow down the pace because you kind of have more of a business mindset, which was, I didn't really anticipate. But again, it comes with time and it comes with work and kind of being able to switch on and switch off. And that's, a challenge of being an entrepreneur is that's quite hard to switch off. So you can, most beautiful place in the world, but you're still thinking about the things you have to do.
And then also with this, with kind of like this business, we're because we're planning for the future, some expectations that typical like entrepreneurs might have, or when they look to start up a business, is that, okay, we need to make money now, or we're going to be making money now. That's not always the case. You're kind of you're working now to make money later. That kind of like there's always that take of it as well. And you just kind of have to be patient with that. I think that's also like an expectation some people have just getting into the business. I mean, we kind of had an idea, okay, all our retreats are for 2018. We just started this, so we're not expecting that monetary to come in right away, but it's just, it's kind of like a stigma, I guess. Everyone, as soon as we start this business, I remember our friends asking, are you guys making money to support yourself now? We're like, no, we're constantly saying, no, we're working on this. We've been working on this. It's going to, kick off next year. But it's something that you have to kind of bite the bullet as an entrepreneur, as a startup. You're not going to necessarily, depending on, your product or service that you're offering, it's not necessarily going to start making money right away. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's probably one of the biggest challenges of having like a new growing business. Had you guys kind of prepared for that, or was that one of the things that was kind of surprising for you as you started?
I think that we both realized that this was going to be more of a long-term investment, if so to speak. So we kind of prepared for the fact that it's the nature of the industry. So you don't necessarily get paid until the retreat happens. So we kind of looked at, I always refer to our, kind of like, our future bank account. So you kind of see the earnings you are going to make. And you kind of just look at it as an investment for that. But I think both of us went in with the mind frame. Initially, we were actually, again, going back to our kind of ever evolving business model. There was different things that we could have done at the beginning to ensure we had more income. So kind of requesting, this is for the planning services, requesting a greater deposit and kind of, potentially charging a small fee for our services. Because the industry we're in, there are times where we do a lot of work, and unless the client books with us, we don't necessarily get paid. So again, having to go back to our business model and our own internal policies and saying, should we be investing time in doing certain things, or should we be getting paid? Because I would say probably in the last year, there was a lot of work that we did that we did not get paid for and will never get paid for. But it was all kind of experience. So I wouldn't say we have any regret towards that.
Yeah, we're just like learning how to tweak the business around that for the next piece of business, for example.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a good mindset to have, because I think sometimes, and I think we're kind of just with society and the way that jobs work, we're kind of like programmed to think this way, but it's like, okay, I do an hour of work, I need to make X amount of dollars. But I think when you're trying to grow a business, it doesn't really work like that. Like you put in long hours and you do a lot of work behind the scenes that, you're not making an hourly wage for. And it's like you said, it's going to pay off in the long run when you've got, all these clients and these really successful retreats and that sort of thing.
Yeah,
exactly.
What also has happened is, sometimes we'll be, in contact with a potential teacher and, we'll be speaking to them and then they don't decide to go ahead with us, but we don't lose that relationship. So we've had instances where people have referred people to us. So we always look at everything as you're gaining something from it, which has really, really helped us. And, there's been times where we've taken on clients that weren't very profitable for us. You would actually eventuate to something else. So, this particular client that we took on that wasn't very profitable actually introduced us to a whole network of people and opened up so many different opportunities. So also looking at as, like an investment towards the future, even though you're not getting, a great return immediately, it doesn't necessarily mean that something, might come of it in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. That makes sense for sure. And so what's kind of like the process? You guys kind of mentioned this before, like you reach out to yoga teachers, but what's sort of the process for, kind of scouting these like yoga teachers or wellness entrepreneurs that you want to work with?
Yeah. So, what we had done initially is when we were just a retreat planning service, I was basically on Instagram a lot. So I was, trying to find different teachers. And I think Instagram is a great tool. It kind of helps you to understand the person's personality a little bit. So it's a little bit hard. And also, a lot of our work is done digitally. So a lot of the time we don't actually physically meet the teacher. So I think it's really good to kind of get a sense of who they are as a person and, essentially decide if it's somebody that you want to work with or don't want to work with. So it was a lot of kind of just a lot of research, mainly done through Instagram and through, just searches of teachers in different areas. And there was a period of time where we were kind of trying to be a little bit more strategic and, targeting teachers in the UK because they have, that's a really big market for Sri Lanka, or targeting teachers in Australia and kind of being a little bit more strategic in that sense and just finding teachers within certain geographies that would potentially want to travel to a certain area. And we built up quite a big roster of teachers while we were in the process of just the reach out to see if they were looking for somebody to plan their retreats. But when we decided to start co-hosting retreat, there's actually a website called Yoga Trade. We kind of decided to go the avenue of putting out ads so that kind of like a call out for teachers that we are looking to co-host and see who kind of, came to us that worked with us. And actually the response was amazing. So it was something we never anticipated. But once we kind of opened that floodgate and started positioning it as an opportunity for people to work with us, we actually had a lot of teachers coming directly to us. It was really, really good. And people forwarding it to people they knew, and just people were just hearing about the business. And it kind of just took off from there. Yeah.
Of all the places that you've worked with and are like planning to work with in terms of locations, where's your personal favorite?
Well, yeah. So Azma's probably biased and going to say Sri Lanka. But Mine is Sri Lanka as well. So I think for me, I've wanted to go to Sri Lanka. I watched an episode of this show called Wild On probably 10 years ago, and it was doing a down of the 10 best beaches in the world, and number one was Sri Lanka. And I remember looking at it and being like, one day I will go there. And I never, it was the type of place that I didn't want to go to alone. And that's why when, the opportunity to travel to Sri Lanka came and to be able to go with Azma, it was amazing. And, I'm a little biased in that sense because I had such amazing tour guides. But I was totally blown away. There's so much beauty in the country. There's such amazing food. The people are so nice. It was just, you really feel like you're so far away, but there's just a lot of quirks to it. I don't know, that I just really enjoyed. And I loved, the mountainous side of things and, going on really amazing hikes and just beautiful scenery, but also just being on these amazing beaches. And I'm obsessed with coconuts and just being able to get a here. It just really, I found myself, I was really able to, when you just go to a destination, you're really able to be free. And I found myself being really creative, getting really good ideas and being able to relax. So it's definitely a personal favorite of mine. And that's kind of why we wanted to bring more people to Sri Lanka to be able to experience it the way that I've experienced it, as a tourist. Azma has a different experience because she grew up there. But yeah, just sharing that with people.
Yeah. So Daniela was right. It is Sri Lanka. Even though there are still places in this island that I haven't seen yet, and I just have to make time to go. But yeah, it's just like this. It's just a magical kind of feeling that you get even if it's like the sunsets, like Daniela said, or like the mountain range, which is like a personal favorite, or snorkeling, and just the other day, I was just taking a walk on the beach and saw two turtles, popping their heads. Their heads were really massive, like leatherback turtles. Just like small little experiences like that just are incredible and give you this awe factor. Like I can't myself believe that I'm in this island here now. But it's just definitely a personal favorite of mine, and I've been to quite a few. So I do have another favorite that I have to add, but it's not on our retreat list yet. Hopefully we could. It's a little hard to get to. Daniela's gonna know which one I'm gonna mention. But yeah, my favorite destination another favorite destination that I've traveled to is Little Corn Island in Nicaragua. It's just amazing. You have to fly into from Managua into Bighorn Island, and then you take like this little small boat, like a 20-minute ride through the rough ocean into this little island packed with 800 people. And it's just stunning. And yeah, like hopefully we can get a retreat going there in either this year or 2019, because it's got that exact same like magical feeling Sri Lanka had for me anyway. But yeah, I think in terms of retreat locations, Sri Lanka for sure. And it's still up and coming in terms of a retreat destination. And it doesn't really, there are a few properties that we work with that are catering to yoga retreats, but there could definitely be more. It could definitely be like another version of Bali, hopefully not as saturated, of course, or not as touristy. But it has all the perfect ingredients, from the food to the culture, to just like the feeling that you have when you're here. It's hard to explain unless you've been here. You just have to come here and, feel it. So
yeah, we'll have to get there.
Exactly. Get here and I'll take you guys around.
Yeah. We have a couple friends who have been, but it's never been like really on my radar, especially not for yoga retreats or, trainings or anything like that. So it's really cool to hear that.
Yeah, it's again, like it doesn't have that many properties that can cater. It's just building that up right now. But it's on the rise. There are more people that are, investing in like the health and wellness. And that's kind of another goal of ours as well, just as a business, because we see so much potential in Sri Lanka for that. we are hoping to, really promote it as a health and wellness tourist destination in the long run. And we've got some big plans on the go for that as well, which incorporate our business as well. So let's see. Hopefully we can make that work.
Yeah, definitely. It's really interesting to hear about a place that has everything that you're looking for, yet it's not Bali. Have you guys had any pushback from any maybe teachers or guests who are like, oh, I kind of would rather just go to somewhere like Bali or Costa Rica, like I don't know about Sri Lanka?
Yeah, I think it's just the distance that is the deterrent for a lot of people, especially, coming from North America. It's a 20-hour flight, plus you're losing about a day on the way here. So that itself is a deterrent. And if people can get over the distance and if they can go to Bali, you can make it here, So it's just a matter of kind of taking that chance and then you'll see it for yourself.
And I think that we have had, I guess, if you want to call it pushback from teachers, but I would say that most of the time we actually have a lot of people who have had Sri Lanka on their radar. So the main reason working with us is because we were, kind of experts on Sri Lanka. So yeah, we've had a lot of people come to us specifically for Sri Lanka, but then we've had a lot of people who, depending on, their geography and where they're from and where their students are from, just say that it's, either too far or, they would prefer somewhere like Bali and somewhere like Costa Rica. And that's perfectly fine with us because ultimately it is their retreat and, we kind of step back, but we always recommend Sri Lanka and you either love it or you don't. So.
And now that you guys are running your business and, the actual retreats happen all over the world and you could probably base yourself wherever, are you planning on staying in Toronto and Sri Lanka, or do you guys have other plans for where you want to base yourself in the future?
Well, I'm in Sri Lanka avoiding the winter. I'm just kind of like say no to winter policy right now.
All the feels on that one.
Yeah. And so I love Toronto summer. Don't get me wrong. I love Toronto summer. And that's where my family and friends are. Most of them are there now. So that's kind of, Toronto will forever be home. That is where I grew up. Although I was just a kid when I left here, so I didn't really have friends growing up in Sri Lanka that you could keep in touch with. There wasn't Facebook around, for example. But no, Sri Lanka is just one of my homes, and I'm hoping to make Toronto. Obviously, Toronto is home, and you never know where else the world will take us. But for now, I think for the next 2 years, it'll be between Sri Lanka and Toronto for me.
Yeah, and for me, I think that it's been a long journey of settling back into Toronto. And I think one of my goals in the last couple of years was to make Toronto my home base again. Just because I found that I felt, a little bit kind of disconnected from my family, being far away. And, Australia is probably the farthest place I could have been in. So wanted to kind of reestablish my roots here. But kind of build this business that still allows me to travel quite extensively and just being able to go to a destination. So we have a retreat coming up in Sri Lanka this March. So Azma's been messaging me daily, asking me when I'm coming. To have that flexibility. I'm probably going to be heading up in the next couple of weeks and spending probably maybe 4 to 6 weeks away. So I think, I'll probably be based in Toronto, but just continue to just be away for lengthier periods of time when we do go on a retreat. And my long-term goal is to be able to spend the winters away somewhere and have a property somewhere that I can kind of retreat to. But yeah, we'll see where the future is. Maybe Sri Lanka, I don't know.
Come run my cafe with me.
Yeah, definitely. It's always nice to hear from other young people who are avoiding Canadian winter, because a lot of people tease us that they're like, oh, you're just young snowbirds. And I'm like, I don't know why I would stay in winter when I have the option not to.
Yeah, exactly. And then, in the future, we're thinking about potentially opening up a a retreat center, or maybe, doing something of that nature, which would, kind of alter where we end up. So it's nice not knowing.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I love that. And so do you guys have like any sort of plans for the next year, 2, 3 years with Adzenture?
Yeah, we have lots of plans. So I think that we want to continue obviously operating within this space and the retreat space, and continuing to evolve as our audience grows and as demand grows, and continuing to, make these types of experiences accessible for people, but also kind of doing different things that are within the same realm of yoga and travel, but, just looking at different opportunities, and, maybe doing more weekend style stuff, or more longer retreats, or different types of retreats, and entering maybe different spaces.
Cool. So if people are, curious about the retreats that you guys offer, where can they go to find you guys?
On our website, we've got, it's www.adzentureretreatsyoga.com. Then they can also follow us on social media, because we always keep up to date with, on there, on either Instagram or Facebook. Lots of things happening in the next year. So lots of retreats to attend to, and really cool places. So.
Yeah, definitely. It sounds like it. So we'll put a link for that in the show notes and whatnot, so people can check you guys out. And thank you so much for your time today. It's been such a pleasure learning more about what you guys do and hearing your story.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thanks so much for inviting us. And it was really our pleasure. And thank you again.
Yeah, absolutely. It was great meeting you guys.
Yeah. And hopefully you guys can come down to Sri Lanka one day. I can show you around, and you'll see why, you can maybe make this another base of yours. There's a lot of nomads actually that come here. I shouldn't say really nomads, but there's a lot of travelers that come here and kind of make it their home base for a few months, or avoiding the winter or whatnot. So yeah. It's not a bad place
definitely.
to be.
Yeah, we'll have to add it to the list for sure.
Yeah.
All right, guys, I hope that you enjoyed that episode of the podcast. As promised, here's some information about my upcoming retreat. It is co-hosted with Kelly Smith, who is the founder of Yoga for You Online, and it is designed for yoga teachers. So it's taking place at the end of April, so April 28th in Nicaragua, and it's called Elevate Your Yoga Biz. And basically, it's about my other love outside of travel, which is the business side of yoga. So if you're a yoga teacher out there who's looking to create, grow, and expand their yoga business with a week-long amazing retreat filled with workshops and masterclasses and so many adventures, this retreat is definitely for you. If you want to find more information, you can find it at bit.ly.com/elevate your yoga. And of course, we'll have a link in the show notes as always. And just quickly before we end this episode of the show, thank you so much to everyone who supports us on Patreon. The support means the world to us, and it makes a huge, huge difference with our business. So if you're looking to support the continued growth and production of the World Wanderers podcast, you can head on over to www.patreon.com/The World Wanderers. On top of being able to support our business, you also get fun kickbacks like one-on-one calls and hangouts with Ryan and myself, postcards from all over the world, and copies of every single one of our ebooks. So head on over to patreon.com/The World Wanderers. And final announcement before we end this episode, we do have a private Facebook community called World Wanderers, a community for travelers. Head on over to Facebook, search that, or find it in the show notes and request to join, and we'll let you in. It's an amazing community if you're trip planning, or if you're looking to meet up somewhere, or if you've got a question about anything travel related. As always, thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next week.
To find more information, relevant links, and photos talked about in this week's episode, check out theworldwanderers.com.
If you have a question, comment, or feedback, send us an email at info@theworldwanderers.com. Join our community on Facebook at The World Wanderers, or on Twitter at WorldWanderers1. As always, thanks so much for listening.
Have a great day.
Bye.